Hey y'all, Natalie here today, and I am creating a really fun layout today of this picture, or these pictures of my son in a wedding. He was professionally photographed here, and so I'm using all these fun bits, and that right there is a gel press paper. And in my last video, you guys said you really liked that I showed how to use gel press printed papers, like if you weren't necessarily creating them for anything. And I did make this a while ago. So this is the process of me making it a while back. That was some like pale pink, and you can see it there. I'm sorry, it's hard to exactly see, but there's some pale pink on that paper, and that will be the paper that I do end up using today. But I was using it as a scratch sheet actually when I was making a past layout, but it's a whole process. We'll get there. So anyway, I have my gel press here, and I'm using a star stencil with white paint. And I did this for a layout back in December. I created like a rainbow background, and then I cut Whoville houses out of it. So that was what I was thinking here with these white stars. So I just put my rainbow, I think I put my rainbow paper on it. Is that what I'm pulling off? Yep, there you go. So that's the paper that I used to create that. But when I pulled it off, I still had some stars. So I'm like, let's play around with it. So I make sure that each layer is dry, except for the last layer that I used to pull up. And I am by no means a gel press expert at all. In fact, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. But this is just me telling you what my process was. So I dried the star layer. And I'm doing like a blue, purple, pastel galaxy is like the idea in my head. So I braid those out, run them into one another, and I think that's going to be really pretty. Again, like I said, I am not a gel press expert. I'm a like trial and error, and oh wow, that worked out. I'm really lucky kind of person. So I'm leaving all of this in here because this is the process that it took for me to get this really cool paper that I end up using on today's layout. And so it's not even something that I can replicate, I don't think. I could do a similar process again, but I don't think that I would ever be able to get this exact look again. So I'm just using like a pale green color through a stencil here, and then I'm using a little stamp to add some texture. And I've dried that layer, and now I'm adding a dark purple over the top because the videos that I was watching about how to use your gel press were telling me that I needed either a whole layer of white or a whole layer of black. In my head, I thought, well, I have a whole pastel bottom part of my gel press, so why not cover it in this really dark color and it'll be the same thing. But I don't know what went wrong. I don't know if I let it dry too much or if I didn't put a thick enough layer on. But you can see right here, I braid over it pretty hard. I'm pressing down pretty hard, and it just doesn't pull up much. Well, I mean, I guess it pulled up like half. So anyway, you can see the stars, and that's cool. And I did end up using that on a layout a couple layouts back. This is where we are just like going off over here. So I'm thinking boho colors, right? Which is why I chose this super weird, like orangey yellow color. This ends up not showing up in anything because after I braid that on, then I took this turquoise alcohol ink, and that's what you see me doing there. So that's alcohol ink, and that made all the colors change. I end up getting a green color, and that is where that came from. Somehow that alcohol ink mixed with that orangey color made like a beautiful green color that I'm super glad it made because I love green. It's my favorite. But it's just not what I expected, and that is fine because it ends up being cool. So anyway, I'm using this turquoise over the top because I'm still thinking like, okay, like boho colors, right? And so I rubbed out like the edge of the stencil. I dried off that layer. And when I am using my heat gun, please note that I'm not holding it on there very long because I'm not sure. It could probably very much mess up your gel press. So I'm barely using it. Then I take a whole layer of this like beige color, and while it's still wet, I put my paper over it to pull up all of that stuff that I just created, okay? And I'm rubbing it with my hands, and I'm like, let me bray it. So I bray it really hard. I'm like pressing down pretty hard here to get all of that color up. And pull it up, and that's it. And it's okay, I like it, but it was so much beige, and I didn't think all that beige was gonna show through, right? I'm so not sure about this gel press, y'all. You're just gonna watch me create these disasters and see what works and what doesn't. So I pulled up another bit, and I didn't show it to you, but I will later because I do end up using it. And then I put this like peachy color over the top of the beige and green, which is what ended up being left, and I'm rubbing over it, and this ends up really cool, and I'm liking it a lot. It picked up some of that old purple that I had a long time back, like 2 or 3 pickups ago, right? And I adore this, okay? I absolutely love this. So it's got greens, turquoise, purple. It has this like peachy color. And there is the layout, the piece that I used today. So I had that pale pink on there, and I had covered it up with all that green. And so that actually ends up being the colors on my layout today. I know that was a lot. Sorry. Let me know if you have any questions, because I know it was a lot and I kind of went fast, but I didn't have a lot of footage of it and I had a lot going on. So I have put clear gesso in the middle of this white cardstock, and I used my abandoned coral distress oxide first, and I just kind of created a swath of color and made it into watercolors. This color is aged mahogany and distress oxide, and it's like a burgundy color. When you activate it with water, it does kind of look a little bit brown, but it's still in the same like rosy pink colored family. And then the last color is that really light colored tattered rose, which you will see me use here in a moment. So I'm just doing what I usually do. You've seen me do this a lot if you watch my videos. Kind of putting it on the paper and using my water paintbrush to turn it into watercolor, and then allowing them to kind of blend together, bond, go together, be cohesive on my page. Yeah, so I had a lot of fun creating this. In my son's shirt, he has like a coral flower. So that is what I was thinking when I started creating this page, was like, oh, I want to pick up the coral, and then in the rub-ons that I want to use from 49th and Market, they're called Vintage Artistry Naturalist Rub-On Transfers, and they have a pretty coral color in them. So that's what I was thinking with that. I let the background dry. I used the aged mahogany to create some watercolor and make some small splatters across the page. There's the dried product. I'm happy with it, loving it. I backed each of the photos in some hunter green paper, and then I roughed up the edges. I typed up this little poem, and I'm going to use it. One of the words in the poem was forever, so I'm going to have that be my standout word. And there's my gel pressed paper with the pink and hunter green colors, and that's what I'm going to use behind each of the photos as like a layering piece of pattern paper. But first I'm going to put on some rub-ons. So from this Vintage Artistry Naturalist collection, I chose this, which looks like a naturalist book, like from an encyclopedia. And then I also chose some leaves, and I cut that one in half. It was a really big one, so I cut it in half, and I'm going to stick it on either side of the photos as though it's sticking out. I'm also going to pair these rub-ons with the Simple Vintage Weathered Garden die cuts from Simple Stories. They work fabulously together. I couldn't ask for a better pair. I took this like label with a little bit of leaf, and that's going to kind of be an anchor for my title. So I stuck it right there in the middle because that's where I'm going to put that poem as like my title. And there is the layering piece that I used from the gel print paper. And you know, it's not a ton, but it's the perfect colors, and it really adds to the distressed nature of my page. I am going to ink up those edges with that aged mahogany, and I love how it looks. So they're just peeping around the green colors, the pink colors, peeping around those photos, and I just think that it adds the perfect thing. Like this page just came together for me when I found all of these things that kind of matched, and I love it so much. So there's what I'm thinking for the title. I'm going to cut up the vellum that I typed it on, and I thought that I would just use it as vellum, but it ends up not being able to be read very well, so you'll see what I do with that in a minute. But I start throwing in the die cut pieces from the Simple Stories collection. I play around with doing some flowers, but I actually end up not using any of the flowers. I only use the greenery as well as the butterflies. There are some rub-on butterflies in the 49th and Market rub-ons, so I loved that I could combine the rub-ons and then combine more of a like 3D butterfly and like put them together. So that's what I'm going to put up there at the top, and you can see it. See, it has that gorgeous, beautiful coral color, and it has a darker color which goes with like the trees in the photo. And I accidentally ripped that die cut, but it doesn't matter. You know why? Because I can just like glue it back together, and it's like it never even happened. Boom. So I love that you have the rub-on onto the actual paper, and then the die cut can be a little more 3D, and I bend up the edges a little bit. I don't put it all flush to the paper, and so it can kind of like have some dimension. So there is one of the Simple Stories die cuts that I'm layering on top of the rub-on butterfly. Super happy with how that looks. And I thought I was going to put another piece of greenery down at the right side photo, but I actually end up adding more butterflies, or they might actually be moths. That one kind of looks like a moth. So I do one that's like got green color in it a little bit, and then I layer it with that ivory one, and then there's a couple of butterflies that are seen from the side, so I use a couple of those too, and I love the way that that looks. And even those, I just stick down maybe like the body part, and I still fold up the wing, even though it's not two wings, so it still works with adding dimension. So some of the scraps that I took off of the gel printed paper, I used to back those vellum pieces, since you couldn't really read the vellum really well when I stuck it down alone. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just putting that vellum on top of the little, excess that I had from the gel printed paper. And then I'm going through and I'm adding a few more splatters from the aged mahogany, and that's going to be it. I know that, I say that's going to be it, like it wasn't a really long video. It was a little bit long, and it was a lot. It was full of a lot of information. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to clarify. But like I said, I am not a gel print expert, but I like to show you my process so you can say, oh, maybe you can pick up a little something, or probably learn what not to do, right? I'm going to link down below with some of these products that I use and my Cherry on Top affiliate link if you would like to go shopping. And I'd love it if you subscribe. Let me know what you guys think down below. I love to hear from you. Y'all have a great day. Bye.